Welcome to Boil the Frog Slowly, a radio program that answers the question, are politics hazardous to your health? We go where mainstream media stops. Co-hosted by Sebastian Sanzota, a marathon runner, a vegetarian, a former healthcare professional with 5 years of military experience in the U.S. Navy, including 2 tours in the Persian Gulf, primarily working with advanced airborne early warning radar aircraft. Sebastian is experiencing firsthand the ill effects of EMFs. He is passionate to share his medical background, experience, and research in an effort to educate and save others from boiling in this hot health war soup. And co-hosted by me, Pat Rouleau, author of Speak Up and Stay Alive, the Patient Advocate Hospital Survival Guide, and host-producer of the nationally syndicated radio show, Speak Up and Stay Alive Patient Safety Radio, heard on 220 radio and cable television stations throughout the country. The books and archive shows are available at speakupandstayalive.com. I too have been slowly and unknowingly boiled by hidden EMF hazards and have jumped out of the pot to tell all. You can listen to all previous and current Boil the Frog programs at boilthefrogradio.com, at iHeartRadio, and on our very own internet radio station, speakuptalkradio.com. I encourage you to share this program with as many people as you possibly can, week after week, as we gig out some of the leading issues we face today to help you understand, function, and ultimately survive in today's toxic environment proliferated by big money. Thank you for joining us as we jump out of the pot. All right, Sebastian, it's good to be back. We had a little hiatus, didn't we?
Yes, we did, but it's very good to be back.
Yes, and we're back with a very, very poignant conversation, I believe, today.
Very important.
Yep. Well, today we have a story with a tragic ending about a young girl, age 15, Jenny Fry from Chadlington, England, who suffered from an acute case of electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome exacerbated by the Wi-Fi in her school's classrooms. Now, despite the fact that Jenny's mom, Debra, pleaded with her daughter's teachers to allow her to work in rooms without Wi-Fi, the school refused. And then sadly, Jenny's recourse was to take her own life back in June 2015. Well, following her death, Jenny's family is now campaigning to raise awareness of EHS and how wireless technology can impact health. And right now, we have Jenny's mother with us, Debra Fry, to fill in the blanks and share her efforts so this doesn't happen to anyone else. Welcome to the show, Debra.
Yeah, welcome, Debra.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to share this story with us. And so if you would, maybe let's step back and kind of retell the story. When did Jenny first realize she was having symptoms? What was she feeling? And what was the first indication as to the fact that perhaps it was the Wi-Fi in the classroom that was initiating the problem?
To begin with, the very first symptoms I noticed, because unfortunately we did have Wi-Fi for a short time at home as well. And that was what alerted me that it was Wi-Fi, because when I took the Wi-Fi out of our house, her symptoms dramatically improved. So then my mission was, because they hadn't all gone away, was to alert the school and try to get them to re-look at whether it was actually safe to have Wi-Fi in school for all the children's sakes, but also because I was convinced by then that it had caused my daughter to have an awful lot of detentions which weren't justified, because she would get her work at the beginning of the lesson, and then she would walk out of the classroom because they used to have seating plans and would be assigned a seat, and obviously in some of the classrooms she must have been too close to the Wi-Fi router, and she would come home describing things like, well, I couldn't stay in there because I couldn't think straight. I needed to find somewhere where I could concentrate and get on with my work. So in walking out of the classroom, she would incur a detention. Unfortunately, that got into a really big mess with the school. I think one year she had about 30 detentions. At that stage, she was managing to cope with the hassle with the teachers and the detentions, but as time wore on, it began to get her down. I did go into the school on numerous occasions, but unfortunately didn't manage to persuade them that this stuff really should never have gone into any school. I started campaigning really from that time on. So the first symptoms I noticed were in sort of January 2013, and we removed our Wi-Fi in about sort of September, October of 2013, and then from that moment on, I became aware of the Wi-Fi in the school because I had no idea it had Wi-Fi in it. I became aware around June 2013, which was when I first raised the issue with the school. After that, it's just been a case of trying to inform them with as much evidence as possible, as and when I got it, that this stuff shouldn't be around children.
And was this a drastic change in Jenny's behavior? I mean, was she having behavioral problems before that, or different?
Very self-motivated, and before that, for the first sort of year and a bit that she was up at the senior school, she was sailing through, no detentions, nothing at all. She was, a great student with a great report. The problem started sort of from January 2013 onwards, and it built up to quite a crescendo by the sort of June of that year. And that was, if I go through the symptoms, first of all, within a month of us having Wi-Fi, and I now know with hindsight that the school actually put their big Wi-Fi system in at the same time as us. So it was over the half-term holiday that they put theirs in, and we put ours in. And within a month, we noticed just a very slight behaviour change, that she became a bit obsessed about time and washing her hair on a Sunday evening at exactly the same time. Even if we were at friends or relatives, she'd say, well, it's time for me to wash my hair. And that was just a really sort of strange behaviour. Then after that, the physical symptoms started to come thick and fast, and that was that she was unable to sleep properly. So we changed her mattress. I also changed the curtains for lined curtains because I thought the light might be bothering her. We changed all kinds of things, but nothing made any difference until we switched our Wi-Fi off. How that came to be is that she started to get more and more symptoms. So I was looking, well, what else has changed in her life? The biggest symptoms that were coming were ear noises, strange sensations in her head pains, headaches, sort of gluggy sensations in her ears. She got some itchy rashes. She got aches and pains in her joints. Then she had a really bad nosebleed and came down the stairs. She'd been working on her computer, the Wi-Fi laptop computer on her desk, and she came down the stairs unable to stop a really bad nosebleed. And the first thing she said to me was, I haven't picked my nose and I haven't knocked it. Why have I suddenly got this horrific nosebleed and I just can't stop it? Can you help me? And even I had a job to stop it. I had to pack it very carefully to get it to stop. And that made me check out on the internet nosebleeds and Wi-Fi. And I became alarmed and shocked and horrified at what I was finding. And I continued researching. I'd gone into the back garden. A couple of days later, it was a lovely sunny day, and I'd said to my other half, wow, this is amazing technology. It's coming through 3 brick walls. Oh my God, just like X-rays. And that was when the penny dropped fully. And I said, right, we have to get this Wi-Fi out of the house, and it's got to be all hardwired to the Ethernet. And that's what happened at home. And immediately she started to be able to sleep. She didn't get any more nosebleeds. And she was feeling a lot better. But her problems of being able to concentrate at school continued. So that was why I was busy campaigning to try to get them to either find her somewhere to work at school. By this time, she was becoming aware herself that this was affecting her schoolwork. In the beginning, she didn't want to know. She wanted a mobile phone like everybody else, but because I absolutely knew mobile phones were hazardous to health, I wouldn't let her have one. Over here, back in 2007, we had Sir William Stewart, who recommended that he wouldn't give his children or grandchildren mobile phones until they were fully physically developed. And he said at the very least, the earliest he would give a child a mobile phone is 16. So she never used a mobile phone. She had borrowed one from a friend because she was going on a camping trip with the school, but you know, we could probably count on fingers and toes the amount of time she actually ever used a mobile phone. She had a very tiny bit of exposure at grandparents' houses to DECT phones, but the most shocking thing to me is how much damage can be done to a child from just Wi-Fi at school. And I think that's what the world needs to wake up to rapidly, because otherwise, unfortunately, we're going to have more and more tragedies as the tsunami of this technology has gone into our lives, and it's everywhere. Very soon, unfortunately, there will be other children suffering the same fate unless all the world's governments wake up and rethink whether this really is a good idea to have this technology in with our children.
And Debra, what was the response of the school officials when you brought that up to them? Did they listen? Did they discount you? How did that play out?
Well, the very first time I went into the head teacher, he did listen. He did take it quite seriously. But he said, well, the problem is, for as many of the studies that you pointed out to me, I could find as many to say that it was safe. But he said, I will double-check everything. Obviously, if I find anything's changed, then I will consider, you know, turning it off. But he said, I can't switch it off for one child. And I'd said, well, you wouldn't be switching it off for one child. It would be all the children, because this is affecting all the children. It's just that some show the symptoms far more quickly than others, but it isn't good for any children to be exposed to this. So we sort of went away, and then the summer holidays came, and I continued researching, and so every time, sort of every 6 months or so, I would go back in with more information and pass it to him, until pretty much just before Jenny died in the sort of March, I decided to start challenging the school again, because by this time I was 100% convinced that this stuff needed to be got out of the school as urgently as possible. And the problem was, a lot of people have said in some of the newspaper articles, well, why didn't the mum keep her child at school, at home? It's very difficult when you've got a teenager who's in the middle of their examination years, in their crucial exams, to suddenly withdraw them from a system that they're sort of entrenched in. I mean, I did have that discussion with Jenny, but she didn't want to suddenly do online learning. She wanted to finish her education at school, so I had no alternative but to try to get it out of the school. Unfortunately, I didn't achieve that in time. I don't think on the day that she meant to actually go through with it. I think that she'd set herself up to try to bring in the police and to get a big investigation going and to highlight it in a big way, and I think everything just went dramatically wrong on the day. Obviously, I have lots of if-onlys, and I will be going through those for the rest of my life, but at this moment, I'm just busy trying to raise as much awareness with as many scientific forums and medical forums and dental forums as possible to just try to get the population of medical doctors, dentists, anybody who understands the science to come on board and try to protect children before it's too late.
Well, bless you for your efforts. Yeah.
Yes, this is very important. And Debbie, I'd like to just kind of make an important point here based on something you just said, Debbie, about your school administrator's response, that he can show you just the same amount of studies that show the technology safe. And it's important, since we're trying to bring awareness to parents and school administrators on this issue, that they're really greatly mistaken on that point. And I would like to refer to Dr. Martin Blank from the Bio Initiative, and also the Scientists' Appeal to the UN. And that is, in fact, there's not a single study that shows this technology is safe, and that has been recently verified by the telecom industry's head attorney. He came out and said to the whole world, we've never once said this technology was safe. So when school administrators look at that data, they're not looking at studies that, in fact, say it's safe. What they're looking at are telecom-funded studies that cast doubt. And that's the whole playbook of the telecom industry. And they're, in fact, following the playbook of tobacco and other similar controversial technologies. And that's how they drag it out. They cast doubt. So they fund scientific studies that draw in conclusion and call for more research to be done, and then years and decades drag on. So it just needs more attention. People really can find out for themselves easily by, if they want to just look into the studies that say that it's inconclusive. It's easy to see they weren't done correctly. I mean, almost anyone can figure that out. The exposure rates aren't right. The intensities aren't right. Basically, they're not even using the same technology that all the kids are being exposed to right now. So it's important for parents and school administrators to get wise to this and educate themselves. And as you said, Debbie, you went on the internet and you were shocked at all the information. Well, anybody can go on the internet and learn this. There's just so much there. This is really key. People need to get educated.
Well, yes, I mean, I would definitely back that up. I mean, I would urge every parent to actually look at the information that is on the internet now and really have a long, hard think. I would urge them to watch the UN appeal from Professor Martin Blank to the United Nations. It's a 5-minute video which you can find on YouTube. And I would urge every parent and every grandparent to look at that and see what the scientists are saying, see what the world's medical doctors are saying, their lectures. There are some amazing lectures from all kinds of people that are available on the internet, and you can find them on various websites, radiation research. I think you have, well, there's so many different websites. I don't remember. Perhaps you can remember some of the names of yours, but certainly the CETA website, that's ssita.org.uk, has a whole group of lectures and DVDs linked to its site, educating people about school over here, but it would also have relevance to school over there. I know you have in Canada, there's Citizens for Safe Technology, and I think it's safe in schools from memory. We also have Wired Child. There are some excellent lectures and videos out there to educate yourselves, and I would urge everybody to educate themselves and then to lobby with their equivalent of an MP that we have over here. So that would be, I suppose, senators. Would it be over there?
Congressmen, senators. Even I would say people need to start at the local level. They need to start going to their city councils. They need to go to school boards.
Well, I would do
teachers.
both. I think it's that urgent. I think that you should do both. I mean, that's what I did, because that's how urgent my instincts were telling me this was. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I wrote to everybody I could think of, associations of doctors, nurses, anybody you can think of, because it's a case of amassing lots and lots of people who are saying, you know, I don't want my child educated with this technology in the schools. I want them to be able to have healthy children in the future. I don't want my children to get cancer. I don't want my children to commit suicide if they happen to have Wi-Fi and phone masts around the schools. You know, we really all have to wake up with some urgency to protect the children. They're being horrendously let down.
Now, speaking of that, Debbie, I'd like to hear it straight from you since you live in the UK. I recently heard an excellent Barry Trower interview on Lost Arts Radio with Richard Sachs, and Barry talked about Wales and a situation they were having over there where they were installing many cell towers, and apparently Wales is very hilly, so they had to put a bunch of cell towers up on tops of the hills and down in the valleys. It was a very expansive program of cell towers. And apparently some of the officials there came to Barry Trower to ask him his advice on how it would affect people. And he told them that if you allow this to be developed with all these cell towers, that you will have a tremendous increase in teenage depression and teenage suicide. And he said if you allow them to build these towers, you will have an overwhelming amount of teenage suicides. And he said, in fact, it will overwhelm your current systems that you have in place. Well, apparently they didn't heed his advice, and Barry said in that interview that 17 months later, everything he said came true, and apparently they still are ignoring him.
I am aware that there was a very large cluster of suicides in Wales, and I don't know for sure myself, but I am aware that there was a very large cluster. I have heard the same as you, that there was definitely some link to the amount of phone masts around the area. So it could well be. I mean, I hope that they have thoroughly looked into it. I've yet to see any reports on that myself, but I can, for instance, give you this, which is top schools face mental health crisis. And this was in the Sunday Times back on the 4th of October of last year. Britain's top schools have warned they are facing an unprecedented outbreak of self-harm, eating disorders, depression among high-flying pupils, weighed down by exam pressures, social media, and obviously in a few cases family breakdown. But they are running parenting classes. They have therapists in on a regular basis. They are also warning at this was at the Headmasters and Headmistresses Conference, that they are just so concerned about the amount of depression amongst teenagers. And this is being played out across many schools across the country. There was another article we found when we were in the hospital visiting Jenny, and it says stressed pupils attempt suicide. Pupils were attempting suicide and struggling with eating disorders. Amongst rising levels of stress, teachers have warned. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's definitely something not right. In my day, when I was at school, we didn't have therapists and counsellors in all the time. I mean, you might get one coming in now and again, but they certainly weren't there on a daily basis like they seem to be in most schools here and probably over there. So something is definitely not right in school. And we really need to wake up and help our young people, because my fear for the future is how, when these young people realise what has happened, how are they going to be? They're not going to be the most caring people in the future for their parents and teachers and head teachers who allowed this stuff to be irradiating them on a daily basis at school, when there were hundreds of scientists around the world saying that this shouldn't be radiating children on a daily basis, because not only are the strong waves that cause the heating problem, it's the low-level radiation that also harms the human body, and in fact not just humans, but animals, birds, bees, pets. We really, really have to wake up and look at the whole of the wireless industry and look at the effects it's having on us in our homes with smart meters, with DEC phones, with baby monitors, with Wi-Fi routers. We need to wake up, and we can have some of this technology, possibly, if we're careful. Perhaps if we go back maybe 5 or 10 years and just have simple phones for emergencies and breakdowns. But we really need to seriously consider the effect this is having on our children, because otherwise we could be seeing the scenario of some of the Hollywood films where we will all be watching the 9 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news to see, somebody actually gave birth to a healthy baby.
Yeah.
Is that the future we want for our children and grandchildren? If it gets that far,
well, the World Health
really
Organization
is
just
to
said
wake
that
up now.
1 out of 2 men will have cancer and 1 out of 3 women will have cancer in the U.S. That's the official WHO stat right now. So something's definitely not right. And I also, Debbie, I would like to, for our listeners' sake, to get educated, because I've really been crash coursing here on this issue lately, and I am amazed at how much information is coming out as we speak and how much has already been out there. And when it comes to the mood changes in teenagers that's being noticed with a drastic increase lately, I'd like to say that there's a lot of science out there on this. In fact, there's decades of science on how frequencies affect moods and people's brains. Going back to the 1950s and 60s, there's books published on this. And I'd like to tell people about one scientist. His name is Nick Begich. It's Begich. He's from Alaska. His father was a U.S. congressman. And he wrote a book co-authored with Gene Manning titled Angels Don't Play This Harp. And that is just a phenomenal book. There's so much in there, and you can then spin off to other material that they reference in there. And that book was published in 1995, and there's now way more than that that's come out. And it clearly shows that all sorts of frequencies, like you mentioned, even the lower ones, the VLF and ELF range, but even the RF, it's well known they affect people's moods, their brains. I mean, it's literally a form of mind control. I don't want to sound too crazy, but that's exactly what it is. But it is clearly by science affecting moods. And it's well known that teenagers and children are more susceptible in 100,000 of different ways to this type of radiation than adults. So again, I'd like our listeners to know about Dr. Nick Begich, Begich, and look him up. He has an excellent website. It's called Earth Pulse, and go to his site, learn about this. This is a serious issue. I want to stay focused on children in schools and teenagers, but it affects all of us.
Well, it certainly does. I mean, it's even affected me, and that's how I can be so crystal clear, and that's how I sort of went into the school with such strength of conviction. I mean, the way it affected me was I had tinnitus, and I basically thought I could hear the birds singing all night long, and I thought, I don't think the birds sing all night long, and I sort of realized then that I was getting these strange ear noises probably that Jenny was describing. And the other thing I had that Jenny didn't have, I had heart racing. I could be sitting on the sofa and all of a sudden my heart would start racing. And when we wired all our computers to Ethernet connection and switched all the Wi-Fi off, because you have to make sure that you switch the Wi-Fi buttons off on the computers, and on any other Wi-Fi device you have to make sure they're all switched off. And we also had to switch it off on the router as well with our telephone provider. Then the symptoms went away, and the only time I occasionally get a little bit of heart racing is if I've been walking around a shopping precinct which has strong Wi-Fi in it, and that will just occasionally set me off if I'm sort of in town and in and out of loads of places with Wi-Fi. But that was how I sort of categorically knew that there was something seriously wrong with this technology. And it's so frustrating because I'm a dental nurse by profession, and so I was very aware of the health risks with mobile phones, because unfortunately I lost my aunt. She had a parotid tumour from the side of the face that she held her mobile phone to, and I lost her to that. And so I, even before that, was aware of the risks of mobile phones and mouth cancers and parotid tumours and brain tumours. So I was very aware of the dangers of this technology, but for some reason got caught out by DECT phones in grandparents' houses. And we've always had a wired phone, because if I'd have had a DECT phone I would have lost it, because I did have one for a short time in a friend's house many years ago. But I've lost my place, sorry.
I was going to jump in for a second. When you talked about holding a cell phone up to your mouth and the dental, I was just doing a little research on how the cell phones affect the mercury fillings and how it causes them to heat up and then leach, and now you've got a mercury toxicity problem.
Well, that's right. I mean, and we all know that mercury isn't particularly good for us. So, yes, I mean, I definitely would urge people to restrict, mobile phone calls to essential calls only, and to text instead of talking, and hold it as far away as possible. Use it on speakerphone. But that's the most upsetting thing to Jenny's father and I, is that we were so aware of the issues, the health issues with mobile phones, and yet we got caught out by Wi-Fi. And even though we did switch onto it, we had no idea that it could be so hazardous to health. I think the other thing that could have contributed to it was that there was a hidden water tower, which only after her death did I discover that actually had 4 phone masts on it. And in fact, they switched on 4G on the 7th of June, and she lost her battle on the 11th of June. So I am...
Where was the water tower located?
Well, it was on the edge. It wasn't on the school's property, but it was right on the edge of their playing field. So I don't know what kind of wave patterns could have been interfering with the school's, if it had combined with the school's Wi-Fi waves and somehow caused further problems for my daughter. I don't know. I'm sure it had something to do with it.
Oh, we've had a lot of reports of people having all kinds of troubles when they switched from 2G to 3G and then 3G to 4G. People just have no idea because they're not being told. Just like you didn't know there was a hazard with Wi-Fi because you weren't told, you weren't informed.
Yeah, and then they hide it in the water tower,
and
who's going to know that? Deborah, after the fact, did it change the reaction to the school? I mean, after she passed away, did anyone say, whoa, we need to step back and look at this, or was it business as usual?
it knocked the school sideways, especially my daughter's friends, because unfortunately this was the second death of a child, because what was it, just over a year before, another boy had possibly, it's difficult to know, but he fell from a 5-story car park. He was a bit upset, and he was talking that he may jump, but some friends of his were trying to talk him down. Unfortunately, he fell off the car park and unfortunately died of his injuries the next day. And that was in my daughter's year group. So it really has knocked my daughter's year group sideways, because this is the second accident suicide that they've experienced now in 2 years. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that I can get it switched off in the school before there's any further. But it's proving to be a tough uphill battle. But
well, yeah, especially in your media. I listened to one of your recent radio interviews over there, and I was just appalled at the horrible interviewing that was done with you. I mean, they didn't even want to really hear about the hazard of Wi-Fi and the possibilities of what may have happened. They were focusing on how you felt. Yeah. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I'm so glad that we're getting to talk and kind of get into the matter here, because obviously the media over there, they don't want to, they just don't want to go there. But there were a couple of good articles on the internet, I think, with the Daily Mail. Was that what it was, Debbie?
Yes. The newspapers have done an excellent job. I've been really, really pleased with Jenny's story. Has gone, well, I suppose in a modern word it could be viral, but I choose to say it's flying round the world. Hopefully educating lots and lots of parents and grandparents to watch more carefully over their children, to find out what technology is in their child's school, to think about what have they got in the home, because I feel that we need to urgently have a safe diet of this technology. I feel if it's cut right down and used sensibly, we might be able to get away with a little bit of this technology, but we certainly can't cope with the tsunami that's been just shoved in around our children without any thought for their health. And I would almost go as far to say it's criminal.
Absolutely.
I just think it's utterly criminal. And I just think it's so sad, because how are these young teenagers going to feel when they figure this all out? They're not going to be the most caring people of the elderly population, the senior population in the future. And who could blame them? Because we've badly let them down. I would urge everybody to check out what's in their child's school, to challenge it, to gather together, write letters, anything you can think of to get this changed before it's too late. I wake up daily and think it must be a nightmare. And unfortunately it's not. It's a reality that once again humanity has made a stupid mistake, and our children are going to be paying the price of this. And if we don't help them if we don't sort this out for the sake of our children soon, then we can't expect. Well, will there be any children to even look after us in our old age? I mean, that's kind of how I feel now. It will kind of be a miracle if any of them survive. It just needs to happen, because I don't want any other mothers to get a phone call from the school saying, where is your daughter today, and then having to go searching for them and finding them hanging from a tree.
Well, and one thing that parents can look for right now, because I guarantee you this is epidemic, are the amount of medications that children are being given. All kinds of pharmaceutical drugs, psychotropic drugs, just so kids can function in school. And this is a fairly recent phenomena. I mean, it's become epidemic lately, where kids all of a sudden need to be medicated so they can function in school with supposed ADHD and sleep disorders and all kinds of hormonal problems. So the problem is parents have sort of been lulled to sleep on this, and they're just assuming their doctors and the clinical technicians at school know what they're talking about and allow their kids to be medicated. But I think right now parents should look closely at their environments and this issue and start asking questions, because the information's out there. I mean, there's plenty of science connecting the radiation frequency exposures to these problems that kids are being medicated for right now. So
yes, I mean, I would definitely agree with that, and I mean, that's something else actually I forgot to mention earlier, is that with girls it definitely seems to affect their monthly cycle, because Jenny had a totally irregular cycle, and then it became a bit sort of irregular. With the boys, with some of the boys, it seems to be affecting them. For instance, if they are getting really angry when they've perhaps played on a Wi-Fi gaming device, not only can they get upset because their game goes pear-shaped and they lose, but a lot of parents of boys affected have reported that their sons get really physical and have this pent-up aggression, and they kick or thump their bedroom doors and break their doors, break their computers, break their gaming machines. Those have been some of the other reported things that have happened with the boys. But certainly with girls, it's sort of sleep disruption, anxiety. One of the things which only became really crystal clear looking back was that Jenny described that she couldn't explain herself when she would be challenged in the corridor. She described a symptom called anomia, which is not being able to find the words, not being able to speak, to say what you need to say. And this is another thing that parents can look out for. And obviously this, too, is a concentration at school. That was the biggest thing that Jenny recognised. She didn't want to have EHS. She denied it for as long as possible. But unfortunately, even towards the end, she became aware that when she was doing tests, if she did them in certain classrooms, she had noticed that she couldn't concentrate and she definitely didn't get good marks. Whereas if she took herself off, or if she asked to do it in a different place and that teacher was agreeable, she would get better marks. So she became very aware. That was the biggest factor, that she was aware that this was really affecting her schoolwork, was with exams and testing. So, I would urge all parents to be on the lookout for these kinds of problems. And I mean, the easiest way to know is during the summer holidays is to see if their child's behaviour is different. If they sort of perk back up to how they were when they were perhaps at primary school or junior school. I'm not sure. Do you call it, because it's high school, isn't it? I don't know what you call your lower school. Lower school. when they're at you can see the difference in the holidays. If you get them away, if you get them out of town, try to take them perhaps camping. The biggest thing that taught me how serious this is of a problem is to get yourself a meter so that you can check out hotel rooms, McDonald's restaurants, Burger King restaurants, because it's quite shocking at how high the Wi-Fi signal strengths are in some of these restaurants, with everybody connected to Wi-Fi, using their mobiles, their tablets, their laptops. It already exceeds in this country the safety settings we've got, and we need them dramatically lowered. Yep. I would urge, all these restaurants to think very carefully about the future, because we all need to be watching over our children's health, not adding to the horrendous problems that so many of them are facing and are going to face in the future.
Yep. Well, we appreciate all of the sharing of this story and all of the work that you're doing. Any last bits of advice or anything that you'd want to kind of wrap up with to entice our listeners to pay attention?
I think probably the final thing was that I did notice that Jenny drank a lot more, so severe thirst as well is something else to watch out for, because basically children are in the microwave oven. Unfortunately, in our wisdom, we've created this amazing world microwave oven, and I had noticed the difference in her thirst between before and afterwards.
Interesting.
So that's another thing to look at. But really is to look at everything, to watch your children's behaviour, their moods, look at the symptoms, look at the internet, look at the EHS symptoms, and think about it. So perhaps you have to home educate your children, or get together as a group of mums and work something out if we can't get it out of schools. I mean, certainly if my children had been in primary school, if they weren't in their exam time, I wouldn't have hesitated in keeping them at home. I wouldn't have sent her to school, but I had no idea that this was such a dangerous technology. I had no idea. When I first started campaigning at the school, I thought I was trying to save her from future cancer and fertility problems. I had no idea that there was this massive suicide risk with phone masts and Wi-Fi around schools, with the Wi-Fi in the schools and the phone masts around the schools. And obviously, you have to look at the 24/7 exposure. You have to look at where you live, what you've got in the house, what's in the school, what's by the school, where you go on holiday. We are all going to have to use the power of our feet by not booking with hotels that have Wi-Fi, but say, well, I've got children. I don't want to expose my children to Wi-Fi in a hotel. So there's so many ways we can start changing this. Yes, my daughter's words are, I have no hope for humanity. We're destroying this beautiful earth as we speak. And those were her sort of final words. So I would urge everybody to think about this big mistake we've made and try to reverse it as quickly as possible for the sake of the children.
Well, you're a beautiful person.
Yeah,
Thank you
very powerful.
so much.
Thank you, and God bless you,
sharing
Debbie.
this.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us on Boil the Frog Slowly Radio. Please come back next week, and for more information, go to the website boilthefrogradio.com. And until next week, remember to practice safe phone.